Out here, skill settled arguments, not opinions, not credentials, not who you knew. If you could ride, people noticed. If you couldn't, nothing else mattered. A horse didn't care about your reputation, didn't care where you came from, didn't care what anyone said about you. It responded or it didn't. Balance told the truth. Timing told the truth. Fear told the truth. And every once in a while, someone came along whose ability was so obvious, so undeniable, that even a world built to exclude had no choice but to acknowledge it. This is one of those stories. Howdy, Chip Schweiger here. Welcome to another edition of Way Out West, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the stories of the American West, brings you the very best cowboy wisdom, and celebrates the legacy of the American cowboy. Out on the northern plains, before rodeo lights, before announcers, before scorecards and rulebooks, there was dust, cold mornings, and horses that hadn't learned manners yet. Bronc riding wasn't entertainment, it was a proving ground. You didn't ride for points, you rode because a horse had to be broken, or because your reputation was on the line. There were no safety rails, no special allowances, no second chances. Just a gait, a saddle, and a horse that would expose every mistake you made. So this week on the show, we're telling the story of a woman who stepped into that world, not asking for permission, not asking for exception. A woman who rode the same horses, under the same conditions, and met the same risks as the men around her. Her name was Fannie Sperry Steele, and her skill was so undeniable that even a world that didn't make room easily had no choice but to take notice. After the episode, check out the show notes at wayoutwestpod.com/Fannie Steele. Welcome back. Last time we talked about sickness, injury, and death on the trail. What happened when things went wrong, when luck ran out, and the margin for error disappeared. Today, we're talking about something else. What happened when preparation met pressure, when discipline met danger, and when skill became impossible to ignore. We're talking about one of my favorite cowgirls, and I think she'll become one of yours too, Fannie Steele. She wasn't a product of show business. She came out of Montana, born in Missoula, raised in the Bitterroot Valley. And that matters, because Western Montana at the turn of the century wasn't gentle, and it wasn't easily impressed. Horses weren't entertainment, they were transportation. They were labor, they were survival. You learned to ride because you had to, not because anyone was watching. You rode in weather, on uneven ground, on horses that didn't care how confident you felt. That kind of country teaches balance early, patience early, respect for a horse's power early. So when Fannie Sperry Steele stepped into an arena later on, she wasn't learning something new. She was doing what Montana had already taught her to do. Because the early 1900s were not romantic out there. They were practical. If you couldn't ride, you didn't ride. If you couldn't stay on, you didn't stay long. Nobody argued about it, nobody softened the standard, because the work didn't allow it. Horses were tools, powerful ones, unpredictable ones, and mastering them wasn't optional. Fannie Steele didn't enter this world by accident. She grew up riding, not performing, not posing. Working horses, learning balance the same way everyone else did, by losing it first. She understood something early. A rider didn't dominate a horse, a rider communicated. Force created chaos. Control created harmony. That understanding would carry her farther than strength ever could. A Bronc didn't know you were a woman. They didn't know you were supposed to fail. It bucked the same either way. That was the great equalizer of the West. No speeches, no explanations, just performance. And Fannie performed. Let's talk about the tools, because tools mattered. The saddle was heavy, unforgiving, built for work, not for comfort. You sat wrong, you paid for it. Spurs weren't decoration, they were communication. Used wrong, they made things worse. Used right, they disappeared into the ride. The reins mattered most of all. Too tight and you lost the horse. Too loose and you lost yourself. This wasn't brute strength, it was balance, timing, patience. And that's where Fannie stood apart. Before rodeo became a sport, bronc riding was a judgment. Not of style, not of flair, of usefulness. A bronc wasn't just wild, it was unfinished. And an unfinished horse was a liability. It could wreck a roundup, injure a rider, spook a herd. So breaking a horse mattered. And the kind of rider who could do it, that mattered even more. Broncs didn't buck in patterns, they reacted. To weight shifting half an inch too far, to hands that pulled instead of guided, to tension the rider didn't even know they were carrying. A bad rider fought. A good rider stayed loose, stayed centered, and let the horse make the first mistake. That was the real test. Not strength, not stubbornness, but timing. Every jump forced a decision. Lean too far forward, and you were gone. Too far back, and you were launched. You had to feel the horse's next move before it happened. And you had to do it with one hand tied to the saddle. No corrections, no second chances, just balance and nerve. That's why bronc riding carried weight in the West. If you could ride a bronc well, you could ride anything. If you could handle pressure, handle uncertainty, handle a bad situation without making it worse, that's the kind of skill ranchers trusted, the kind cowboys respected. And that's what made Fannie Sperry Steele different. She wasn't just staying on, she was reading horses, adjusting midair, letting the animal burn itself out, while she stayed calm. That level of control couldn't be taught quickly, and it couldn't be faked. You either had it or you didn't. And when people watched her ride, they knew. In 1912, Fannie Sperry Steele entered the World's Championship bronc riding contest. No qualifiers, no exceptions. She rode against men on their horses under their conditions. And she won. Not a woman's title, not a novelty ribbon, the championship. No explanation followed because none was needed. Skill doesn't need defending. Out west, respect wasn't loud, still isn't. It didn't come with applause or praise or speeches afterward. It showed up quietly, in fewer doubts, in fewer explanations required. It showed up when no one questioned why you were there anymore. That was the difference. You didn't earn respect by talking about what you could do. You earned it by doing the work, over and over, without excuses. And once you proved yourself, the conversation ended. No more tests, no more challenges, just an understanding. That was the kind of respect Fannie Steele earned. Not admiration, not novelty, acceptance. She wasn't the woman rider, she was a rider. Someone you trusted on a bad horse, someone you didn't worry about in a dangerous spot. And that mattered more than trophies ever could. Because in the West, trust was currency. If people trusted your hands, your judgment, your nerve, you belonged. And once you belonged, nobody argued about it again. The West didn't bend for women. It didn't soften its standards, it didn't lower the bar, didn't make space out of kindness. If anything, it expected more. Because a mistake from a woman wasn't forgiven, it was remembered. A bad ride didn't just mean you were having an off day, it meant you didn't belong. And that was the risk. So when a woman succeeded out here, it wasn't because the West changed. It was because she met it on its own terms. That's what makes Fannie Sperry Steele matter. She didn't ask the West to see her differently. She didn't ask for it to be fair. She rode the same horses, faced the same danger, accepted the same consequences. And she didn't just survive it, she excelled. In a world where failure was permanent and reputation traveled fast, she built one strong enough that it couldn't be dismissed. That's the part of the story that lasts. Not that the West was harsh, everyone knows that, but that a woman could step into it, clear-eyed, prepared, unapologetic, and leave no doubt behind her. Okay, before we close out for this week, we've got one more thing. Yep, that distinctive call from Buster the Bull means it's time for our Cowboy Glossary term of the week. And this week's term is riding for the brand. So out west, that didn't just mean working for a ranch. It meant loyalty, responsibility, and reputation. If you rode for the brand, your work reflected on more than just you. It reflected on everyone you worked beside. And that idea, standing by what you represent, still matters today. Well, that's about all for this episode of Way Out West. I appreciate you spending part of your day with me and hope you remember that the West was shaped by women too, not by asking for space, but by earning it. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with a friend who loves a good Western tale. That helps us reach more fans of the American West. And don't forget to drop us a review on your favorite podcast app and connect with us on Instagram and Facebook. Next time on Way Out West, we're shifting gears from saddle leather to fiddle strings, from horses under you to rhythm in the air, to a man who took cowboy music and taught it how to swing. We're talking about Bob Wills and how the West found its rhythm. Until next week, this is Chip Schweiger reminding you that respect is earned, competence carries weight, and the West has always had a way of sorting things out. We'll see you down the road.